Hello. Ahsoka was on transit from Mandalore to Coruscant when Order 66 started. So what if Ahsoka was at the Jedi Temple during Order 66? Would she be able to bring Anakin back, or would she perish at his hands? Special thanks to Lightsabers for sponsoring our 75,000 subscriber lightsaber giveaway. All the details are in the pinned comment down below. Also, special thanks to Fantasy Folklore for joining me on this epic collaboration. Don't forget to go check them out. All their details are also down below. Our story begins on the planet of Mandalore. Ahsoka Tano, former Padawan, had just beat the crazed Darth Maul in combat. Before her duel with the former Sith assassin, he spoke of Anakin Skywalker and how important his role was for bringing imbalance to the galaxy. To Ahsoka, this was a confusing sentiment, considering it was Anakin who was meant to bring balance to the Force according to the Jedi. Though she didn't realize that just as easily as he could bring balance, he could also disrupt what little balance remained. Maul told Ahsoka that it was too late to save the imbalance, so Ahsoka returned to the Jedi Temple as soon as she finished her duel with Maul. With Maul captured and being placed in the very last Mandalorian sarcophagus, the clones would be safe and Ahsoka would be able to freely leave. Considering she was no longer a Jedi, she didn't have to wait on ceremony, and so she left immediately. When Ahsoka returned to the temple, it was quiet. Coruscant was dark as well. There was nothing seemingly wrong with anything. She landed her vessel inside the Jedi Temple hangar bay, many of the Jedi seeing her and recognizing her, almost respecting her as if she was still a Jedi. Ahsoka found this to be rather endearing. It almost changed her perspective on the Jedi, considering it was the corrupt Jedi Council that almost found her guilty and have her executed after being tried in front of the Republic for the Jedi Temple bombing of which she did not commit. The memories of those few short days were brutal to her. Walking through the temple triggered some of those past memories, but they also reminded her of all the good times she had inside the Jedi Temple. When she was a youngling and even when she was a Jedi Padawan, she reminisced about all the good times. All the times Anakin told her what she was doing right, and even all the times he took her to the side and told her what she should have been doing. In this moment, she realized how much she enjoyed her former master's presence. Before the Siege of Mandalore began, she didn't really take in the moment to enjoy being around her master. Now that she was reminiscing, she felt a surreal level of peace. Ahsoka's room was no longer hers, and so she went towards the Jedi Temple garden to meditate. She knew that her master wasn't in the temple, so that left her compelled to wait for him. Certainly nothing bad could happen in the time that it took for him to get back to the temple, right? Ahsoka smiled at Jedi passing by, many of which bowing to her respectfully. To have the bravery that Ahsoka had was well respected. Sure, maybe no longer a Jedi, but a wise young woman. Ahsoka had the values and the respect of the Jedi. She was the embodiment of what every Jedi aspired to be like. To strive for what she was able to accomplish by standing up for herself and not bending to the will of the Republic was highly respectable. Ahsoka stopped for a moment. She looked at a door and walked towards it and opened it up. She smiled. It was a room where she was trained before Anakin completely changed her training regiment. She grinned, remembering how painful it was to be stunned for hours on end by some of the best clone troopers the galaxy had to offer. It sucked in the moment, but on the other side of it, Ahsoka appreciated it a lot more. As she carried on, she saw one of the massive statues from the end of the hallway. The statue was situated in the Great Hall of the Jedi Temple. It was a statue of one of the former Grand Masters of the Jedi Order. Ahsoka couldn't remember the name. As she entered the elevator, she remembered that it was Satele Shan. Ahsoka grinned and waited as the door opened up, and she walked past Jedi Master Tera Sinube, who was walking towards his late-night nap location inside of the Jedi Archives. He was clearly happy to see Ahsoka, but with a simple nod, they both knew every word the other had to say. She walked up a couple steps and into the garden of the Jedi Temple. The sound of vehicles buzzing by in the distance were overshadowed by the sound of the light breeze blowing through the garden. A couple leaves fell off the tree and Ahsoka knelt down before the tree and closed her eyes. The Force felt off, awry if you will. She was in her meditation for a good couple minutes until she heard Anakin's voice cry out in pain. She could hear the words etch out inside of her head. What have I done? Ahsoka's eyes shot open and everything was still. The sound of wind vanished and there wasn't even the hollow sound of buzzing of speeders as they flew by. Ahsoka blinked, looking at the tree and wondering if there was something that went wrong. Out from the silence, cut through the echo of 1,000 footsteps, Ahsoka jumped to her feet to piece together in her mind what it was, and before she could react, she felt the darkness in the Force crest over her heart. The galaxy was immediately engulfed in darkness. Just a couple planets away on Cato Nemodia, she felt the death of the Jedi Master who brought her to the Jedi Temple. The pain was crippling, but she needed to find out what that echo was that she could feel. But before she could, the sound of blaster fire erupted. The Jedi Temple was under siege. Ahsoka ran to the door to see countless Jedi running. Ahsoka tried to get their attention, but there was nothing she could do to get their attention. She ran forward following a number of Jedi as she came up to the upper layer of the Grand Hall hall, looking down and seeing dozens of clone troopers cut down Jedi Masters, Knights, and Padawans. It was the men of the 501st. Ahsoka tried to figure out what was going on. She served with all these men. This behavior was outrageous, especially for them, and how close they were to their Jedi General and their former commander. It didn't make any sense. Ahsoka looked around, trying to see if she could find Anakin. There was no sign of him. She immediately feared for the worst, that these clones did the same to him. But she knew that couldn't be the case. She could still feel his presence, but he felt different. Before Ahsoka could figure out what was happening, she dodged blaster fire from the men of the 501st and began shooting at her as a very few of them that made their way up to her level got around the corner. Ahsoka ignited her weapon and quickly defended herself, trying her best not to hurt or injure the men, but more of them piled around the corner. Ahsoka moved in closer, using all of her training against the exact men that helped her train. As she got closer, she used the Force to move the men from their feet, throwing them into pillars and into each other. When Ahsoka cleared them out, she heard the cries of younglings. The Jedi Protector had been blown away. Ahsoka looked down, seeing the younglings running away from a number of clone troopers. Ahsoka had to protect them. She ran and leapt over the edge down to the levels below her. She landed behind a trio of clone troopers. They all turned around, but it was too late. She cut their blasters out of their hands, and then she threw them through the air, away from the younglings. Ahsoka got to the younglings and told them to run. As she heard crackling behind her, Ahsoka looked back and saw the statue of Grandmaster Satil Shan crumbling. The younglings cried out in fear, watching Ahsoka stand between them and their statue, raising her hands and forcing it away from them. A number of clones came running up the stairs. Ahsoka pushed the younglings forward, blocking blaster shots back in the arms and legs to avoid completely killing the clones. The clones, when hit, were thrown off their feet. The younglings got to an elevator as Ahsoka told them to get in. As they did, they were transported to the High Council chambers. Inside the elevator, Ahsoka closed her eyes, feeling into the Force, trying to find her former master's essence. It was close, but it was cold. A chill ran down her spine, just feeling his actual presence. The elevator doors opened, and Ahsoka opened the doors to the chambers themselves and found a bunch of younglings. They all looked terrified. Ahsoka closed the door behind her and the rest of the younglings as they got in. She told them to all stay put and they would be safe here. She would return when she found out what was happening. Before she finished talking, the doors shot open from behind her. Ahsoka felt a chill shoot down her spine. She knew exactly who it was before she turned around, and when she did, she looked into the eyes of her former master. She could feel it now, better than she could when she first realized he was here inside the temple. The dark side surrounded him. Ahsoka didn't want to believe it, but how could she deny it? It was right here in front of her.
Oh, Anakin, I'm so glad you're all right. We have to get these younglings out of here. Anakin, what are you doing? Don't tell me this is all because of you.
Her former master stepped forward and swung down at Ahsoka as she immediately ignited both of her weapons to defend herself from Skywalker. His heavy strike jarred her enough to make her realize that he was trying to kill her. With Anakin's next strike, she pinned his blade into the ground using her acrobatic abilities to get around him and get closer to the elevator. When she turned around, she used the Force to close the doors of the council chambers as she stared at Anakin, watching his next move. Anakin rushed her, forcing her into the elevator as the two of them traded blows in tight space, using all their skills and talents to keep each other from landing a potentially killing blow. Ahsoka's mind was moving a million miles an hour as the doors opened behind her and Anakin kicked her out of the small tube they were in. Ahsoka regained her balance as Skywalker marched out towards her, towering over her as she cried out at him.
Please stop, this isn't you.
Skywalker swung down and hit her blade as she called out to him again.
Anakin, it doesn't have to be this way.
Another colliding of blocks and parries rang out through the hallway.
Think about all you've done.
Ahsoka's blades moved down from her face as she stared at him.
I don't know why you're doing this, but think about your friends. Obi-Wan, Padme, even your mother Shmi. What would she be thinking right now?
Ahsoka watches as Skywalker stops his pursuit and lowers his blades to his side. In the chaos around the temple, between the blaster bolts and the copious amounts of death, there was profound stillness between former master and apprentice. Ahsoka had broken the first barrier of Skywalker's defense.
I can see it in your eyes. Your heart is clearly not in this. Why are you doing this?
Ahsoka watches Anakin fall to his knees as he turns his head towards the carnage around them. Ahsoka ponders what he could be thinking about, still fearful that he will attack her again.
What have I done?
The sound of a couple clone troopers running up behind her could be heard, calling out to General Skywalker.
General Skywalker, do you need any assistance?
Ahsoka turned her attention towards the clones as she watched them get lifted off of their feet and sent towards the ceiling, and then released them, allowing them to fall back to the ground unconscious.
Anakin, we have to stop this.
Snips head towards the Great Hall. I'll go to the archives and clear out the troops.
Ahsoka nodded her head and turned around, running towards the Great Hall. She had one goal in mind, keep as many of the students safe as she could, while also doing the best she could to keep herself from killing these clones. She served with many of these clones aside from the few that joined the 501st shortly after she left the Grand Army of the Republic. But there were still so many clones inside the temple. Their only strength though was in Anakin, and without him fighting for them or with them, there was little that they could do to truly fight against the temple's defenses. Ahsoka ran ran through the massive corridors, running over and avoiding stepping on fallen brethren. So many Jedi were gone, so many familiar faces, and while Ahsoka couldn't see the faces below the clone trooper helmets, she knew that she must have known them. Ahsoka stopped. A handful of clone troopers came running around the corner and began to fire at her. She blocked their shots with precision, doing the best she could to avoid killing them. She knew that based off their behavior they were trying to kill her anyways. She staggered back as a couple more clones rounded the corner. She spun around the corner and got behind a pillar, feeling the vibrations on the ancient column being blasted. She heard the clones calling out orders to each other.
Go, go, go! Take her down!
And she closed her eyes to feel their footsteps get closer. And when they were right next to the pillar, she ignited her lightsabers once again and leapt out with incredible speed. The clones were all thrown from their footing. When she rallied around her lightsaber, she cut through their blasters. She made sure that she didn't cut off their hands or kill them in the process. When all their blasters were gone, they moved in for a physical attack. Ahsoka had done the same exercise once before with Asajj Ventress, when she was first accused of the temple bombing. Ahsoka deignited her weapons and moved quickly between the bunch of clone troopers, using the force to throw them from their feet into walls and using her hands to throw others into each other or simply knock them out altogether. If she could get through the men without collectively killing them and saving them, then maybe they could do something about their behavior. Ahsoka, after knocking out all the clones, carried through her journey, igniting her weapons again to knock out more clones. As she got closer to the Great Hall, she found a couple of Jedi. They were holding down a training room. Two of the Jedi were knights and the other one was a Jedi Master. Ahsoka had the jump on the clones, because there was a number of them trying to get in and breach the training room. From Ahsoka's perspective, it looked like the last 3 Jedi holding the line were the last of 6 or 7 Jedi that had been defending the room. The clones outside didn't notice Ahsoka. As they were creating a firing line to kill the final 2 Jedi and get inside the room, Ahsoka sped up, running as fast as she could at the clones, and before the clones could notice her, she used as much of her strength as she could against the clones, unleashing a massive force push that even knocked her off her feet. When Ahsoka looked up, the clones had just landed dozens of meters away. The 3 Jedi inside the training room looked at her and then ran up to help her. They were so surprised to see her. Ahsoka had been friendly with one of them in the past, but the others she was unfamiliar with. Before anything could be said, blaster fire came around the corner. Ahsoka noticed that these last Jedi were protecting younglings, so Ahsoka did what she could. She told the Jedi,
Get to the council chambers. It's the safest place in the temple. I'll fend off the clones.
The Jedi nodded their heads, standing side by side with Ahsoka as Natabre, one of the Jedi Knights, ushered the younglings out of the room. When the younglings started down the hallway, the Jedi broke off, and Ahsoka was left on her own. Though with the aided help from the other Jedi, they were able to knock back a couple of the clone troopers. Ahsoka made her way forward, using every ounce of her training she'd received over the past years. At her peak training with these clones, she was getting close to 5 whole minutes in a circle, avoiding shots from all of the troopers. Ahsoka was likely one of the only few beings in the entire galaxy that could evade these clone troopers for so long. And then, from behind the clones, a group of 4 Jedi emerged. They cut down the clones in front of them and ran towards Ahsoka. They had a special cargo with them. They were taking the future of the Jedi Order to Master Kelleran back, and they were asking,
What is the safest passage to the top south side of the temple?
I'm not sure. I do know that the council chambers are the safest place in the temple. I've cleared a path. You should be able to get Grogu there without any resistance.
Thank you, Ahsoka. May the Force be with you.
Ahsoka nodded and looked out at the little pod and smiled at Grogu as he passed by, surely traumatized by the events taking place around him. Ahsoka turned towards the Great Hall and continued on her path. The sound of blaster fire still echoed around throughout the temple, but it all felt like things were cooling down a bit. The echoes weren't so prevalent, and that had to be a good thing. But when Ahsoka got to the bridge over the Great Hall of the Jedi Temple, she found that she was very wrong. She looked down and saw many dead Jedi. The Great Hall was littered with them. Scattered amongst the bodies of the dead were clone troopers that were also cut down. Ahsoka saw the statues displaced by blaster fire. Above her, she could see clones and Jedi still fighting their final fights. Ahsoka felt a chill run down her spine. She hadn't seen Anakin in a while, and this dark eminence was so much worse than what Anakin was when he was violently killing Jedi. Ahsoka felt another chill run down her spine as she turned her head and saw a number of elite Republic Senate guards running in. These guards didn't protect senators. They were only stationed to protect the Chancellor. They ran in and took up offensive positions. Behind them, there was a hooded figure. Ahsoka felt goosebumps cross her entire body. She knew it was the Sith Lord they had been looking for. Was this possibly what Obi-Wan was referring to earlier? Ahsoka climbed over the railing and dropped down to the ground floor. She knew she was no match for a true Sith Lord, especially if this was a Sith Lord himself, but surely Anakin would feel this darkness and come to help. Sidious looked up from under his robes and pointed his finger forward without even saying a word as his royal guard ran forward and attacked Ahsoka. She immediately ignited her weapons. These guards were some of the best in the entire galaxy. They struck and jabbed at Ahsoka. 4 of them were more than enough for a challenge for her as she moved between strikes and watched the hooded figure walk past her towards the center of the Jedi Temple, searching for his apprentice. To Ahsoka, it was a show of arrogance that he didn't even think of her good enough to defend herself from these guards. One of their weapons slit her bicep just enough to catch her off guard. Ahsoka focused back into the moment and forgot about the Sith Lord. She swung, parrying and defending herself, leaping and dodging with extreme precision, using all of her flexibility to undermine these guards. And with the Force as her ally, she was able to see these guards and all their moves before they even happened. The royal guards snapped at her, and Ahsoka got herself out of the circle and cut 2 of them down. She used her main saber and her shoto to block both of them at the same time. Ahsoka then spun below the guards, cutting their legs out from under them and then killing them. She turned around to see the dark shadow walking towards the middle of the temple, still. Ahsoka didn't know where it was going, but she wasn't about to let this Sith kill any more Jedi. She ran forward and leapt into the air, over the Sith Lord. Sidious stopped in his tracks, and without looking, Ahsoka flew to the side, smashing into the ground and rolling away. He turned around and smiled. He would have the perfect opportunity here to help force Skywalker into the dark side of the Force. Ahsoka got up, a little shaken from hitting the ground as hard as she did. She grabbed her lightsabers and ignited both of them and ran forward. Sidious smiled. He waited till she got up to him, and when she did, he moved out of the way. Without igniting his weapons, he used the Force to stop Ahsoka from ever making contact with him. For his age, he was incredibly agile, avoiding every strike. Sidious grinned when Ahsoka got frustrated, trying to use all of her power to kill the Sith Lord. He stepped back into his powerful footing as he ignited his own lightsaber and parried Ahsoka's once, and then spun under her swing and dragged his lightsaber across her stomach. She fell down in front of him and he grinned. Ahsoka's visions faded, and she could hear the echo of Anakin and Sidious beginning their confrontation.
Foolish boy, you disappoint me. It seems you require one last lesson.
You're gonna die for what you made me do.
The 2 of their blades echoed back and forth, the sound of it fading in and out as Ahsoka stared at the ceiling. She felt the same pain she felt so long before. It was last on Mortis. She was in the same position, helpless, reliant on her former master to save her. But she couldn't focus on that. Her breathing shallowed, and the echoes of the lightsabers furthering themselves away from her made it feel like she would die in this state alone. She tried to remember anything in her training. What would Master Yoda have said? What would Plo have said? Or Obi-Wan or Anakin for that matter? She thought back on teachings, but her dizziness left her adrift. When Anakin killed Sidious, he ran over to Ahsoka's side. It was the second time he'd been put in this position before, looking down at his dying student, his friend. His heart broke, but his anger rose, wishing that he could kill Sidious 100 more times for doing this to Ahsoka. Anakin looked up and saw a Jedi Master who wore the crest of a High Republic robes. Master Kelleran Beck jumped down from the walkway that crossed the Great Hall. He ran forward and got down next to Ahsoka and Anakin. He looked at Anakin and told him to work with him. Anakin looked at the Jedi Master a little confusedly as Kelleran took Skywalker's hand and put it gently on Ahsoka's stomach. Kelleran closed his eyes and told the Chosen One that they would begin to transfer a little bit of their own essence in the Force to Ahsoka so that they could heal her. Anakin nodded his head, and his anger immediately subsided as he focused as much as he could, and he felt his energy transfer from his body, and Ahsoka jolted back with full energy inside of her. The cut on her bicep disappeared, and the cut across her stomach faded into a tiny, invisible scar. As she popped up, Anakin wrapped his arms around her. Bail Organa would be brought to the 2 of them, escorted by a number of Jedi Knights who saved him on the landing platform from a number of clone troopers. When he arrived, most of the clones had been defeated, and he was gifted safe passage to who in turn was the highest ranking member of the Jedi Order being present, being Council Member Anakin Skywalker. Bail, Anakin, and Ahsoka would reach out to Kenobi and Yoda, the only 2 known survivors of the Jedi Council. With Order 66 having been executed, the Jedi would take over the Senate aggressively. This would be enforced by the few surviving Council members, Grand Master Yoda, Obi-Wan Kenobi, Coleman Kaj, and Oppo Rancis, accompanied by former Council member Tara Sanube. The Jedi would use the Delegation of 2000, which was supported by Padme Amidala, Mon Mothma, and Bail Organa, to force the Republic into a vote. The Senate would reject Order 66 and vote the Jedi into being peacekeepers once more, though there would be restrictions. With the Republic having won the Clone Wars and the Separatist leaders being found on Mustafar thanks to Anakin Skywalker, the Jedi would be restricted from the Senate, the Republic, and they could no longer be able to stay inside the temple on Coruscant. But it's not like the Jedi really wanted to stay here anyways. The High Council, while few, would make some actions. After watching holo recordings of Operation Nightfall, they would remove Anakin Skywalker from the Jedi Order, though he would face no legal repercussions because he was technically following orders, just like the clone troopers. The Council would also move to make Jedi Master Obi-Wan Kenobi the Master of the Order. Before leaving, they would through ceremony destroy the Jedi Temple and the Sith Temple that sat below it. With both temples gone, the Jedi would relocate the Tython. Ahsoka would be offered a chance to rejoin the Order once more, though she would again deny it. Her and the Order itself would remain in good terms with each other, especially after Ahsoka's heroics during Order 66. The Jedi Council would accept new Jedi Masters into their ranks, one notable being Grogu's caretaker and Master Kelleran Beck. As for Anakin Skywalker himself, he would join Padme on Naboo with their children. After the stresses of Order 66, she was forced into labor. Anakin would realize his mistakes, and there would be tension between him and his wife, but they would healthily overcome them. Padme, after the new Chancellor was voted in, would retire from politics and focus on her marriage and of course raising her children. Obi-Wan would eventually forgive his former student and actively visit the Skywalker household on Naboo, giving his best wishes and watching happily that Anakin finally got the life he always wanted. Ahsoka too would visit the Skywalkers, and she too would have her heart warmed that Anakin was able to find his inner peace. The final visitor to the Skywalker home would be Grandmaster Yoda. Though he wasn't coming to force the twins into the Order, he was coming in to check on Anakin. Yoda knew that the Order had fallen down a dark path, and it was his job to bring it back to the era it sat in during the time of the High Republic. He too had forgiven Skywalker for his brash actions during Order 66, and he found peace in Anakin's happiness, and that Luke and Leia would be raised in a loving home, with someone who knew how poisonous the dark side of the Force truly was. With the Sith gone and Maul executed during the events of Order 66, having been stuck in the Mandalorian sarcophagus, the galaxy would have a fresh start at change. In the shadow of the Clone Wars, the galaxy would have a chance for total change, and with the Jedi uninfluenced by the Galactic Republic, they had the ability to change everything that caused their order to fall, while the Skywalkers would live out the rest of their lives in peace. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our story. Again, special thanks to Gallivant Gaming, Jack Miller, Tristan, Darth Revan, Pimp Daddy Bane, The Last Jedi, Apollo, Mad Money Studios, Jedi Sloth, Anakin 003, Lemon Knight, Flynn Vad Cease, Rex the Wolf, The Man with Three First Names, Dark Saint 46, Lord Deadwing, and of course, special thanks to Fantasy Folklore for joining me on this video. Go check them out. They are awesome. I absolutely love those guys. Anyways, let's talk about this awesome story. So, if you haven't already figured it out, this is a collaboration of two different perspectives, and it's something that both Fantasy Folklore and I thought would be a really cool way to take on this topic of Ahsoka being at the temple. So if you want to see his perspective or Anakin's perspective of the events, I do suggest you go check out their video. I know it's going to be amazing. As for my perspective of the events, we've covered Order 66 in the past week a couple of times, and I thought it'd be cool to cover it, of course, in a different way, of course, from Ahsoka's perspective. I really wanted to get into the mind of Ahsoka during this moment, the kind of build up to have that nice tension, but also the alleviation of getting past Anakin's turn to the dark side. I think during Operation Nightfall, which is something both Fantasy Folklore and I agreed on, is that Anakin would still likely try and fight Ahsoka, but not at the same degree as which he would on Mustafar. I think on Mustafar he'd be more determined to kill her, but I don't know if he'd be as determined to kill her during this moment. Ahsoka's gonna have that one chance to get through to him, being probably the only person on Coruscant aside from Padme to get through to him. Obviously Obi-Wan, I think if he was at Operation Nightfall, would be able to do the same. However, he was not here. So that aside being the point, I wanted to cover Ahsoka's tracks to the temple and kind of give life to different aspects of what we've seen at the temple. We saw this last week with Anakin being killed during Order 66, and I really wanted to emphasize different aspects of the temple. You know, having Kelleran Beck there was something that Fantasy Folklore thought would be really cool, but also like for longtime viewers of my channel, throwing in Natabre, someone who has been shown in the Sith Clone Wars series, just having her like a little cameo there for people that have been longtime watchers of this channel, and seeing like, if you've ever been curious where she would fit in canon, she'd probably die during Order 66, and she probably would have died if Ahsoka wasn't there. And so having that nice little setup for you guys was something just like a little cherry on top to what I think is a great collaboration. So anyways, if you guys want to see more from both of us, you already know what to do. Subscribe to Fantasy Folklore, also subscribe to me, but also smash the like button because honestly, I would love to do this again, and I'm sure they would too. Anyways, I love you all, spread the love, and always remember, my friends, may the Force be with you.